The city glowed beneath the soft sheen of evening lights as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows over the marble sidewalks of downtown Manhattan. It was the kind of night where the air held a mild chill that felt refreshing rather than cold, a perfect evening for celebration. High above the noise and bustle of the city, perched atop one of the most luxurious hotels in the area, the Aurora restaurant glistened with crystal chandeliers, golden candlelight, and the quiet hum of soft piano music that curled through the air like silk. Ryan Wallace, billionaire CEO of Wallace Global Industries, stood at the edge of the restaurant's rooftop terrace, his tailored navy suit catching the amber glow of the setting sun. He was a man carved from granite, sharp jawline, silvering temples, and eyes that had stared down boardrooms full of competitors without blinking. Known for his commanding presence and ruthlessly efficient business acumen, Ryan was not often described in terms of sentiment or softness. But tonight, his stoic exterior bore subtle cracks. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe gifted to him on his 50th birthday by an oil magnate, and turned toward the entryway with an unusual sense of anticipation. Tonight marked 20 years since he had married Elena, the one woman who had seen past the ice in his eyes and the steel in his voice. She had been his equal in every way, charming, intelligent, graceful. Theirs was not a love that bloomed in sudden fire, but one that had been forged slowly in loyalty, respect, and shared dreams. And while time had brought its share of distance between them, Ryan had made a decision weeks ago. He would do something meaningful, something memorable. He had arranged this dinner in secret, reserved the best table with the view overlooking the city, chosen her favorite wine, and had even written a speech, though whether he'd find the courage to read it remained uncertain. The maitre d' approached with a courteous bow. "Mr. Wallace, your wife has arrived." Ryan turned just in time to see Elena step onto the terrace. Time seemed to pause. She wore a deep sapphire gown that shimmered like ocean waves in moonlight. Her dark hair swept into a loose bun with strands curling gently around her face. She smiled when she saw him, and in that brief moment Ryan felt like the years had rewound, bringing him back to the day she'd first walked into his life. "You're early," she said with a hint of amusement as he leaned in to kiss her cheek. "I didn't want to miss a second," he replied, guiding her to their table near the edge of the terrace. They settled in, the cityscape sparkling behind them like a sea of diamonds. A server approached, but it wasn't the usual stiff-suited waiter you'd expect in such a place. Instead, a young woman with gentle features, her dark hair tied in a neat ponytail, approached with careful steps. Her uniform was clean but worn, her shoes scuffed and her hands slightly calloused, details Ryan's sharp eyes took in instantly. But what stood out most was her smile. It was warm, genuine, and directed at Elena with a kind of grace rarely found in the customer service industry. "Good evening, and happy anniversary," the waitress said, placing menus in front of them with delicate care. "My name is Lila, and I'll be serving you tonight. If there's anything special you need, or if there's a favorite dish you're hoping we have, just let me know. We want this evening to be perfect for you." Elena smiled in return. "That's very sweet of you, Lila. Thank you." Ryan remained silent, observing with subtle intensity. Lila poured water into their glasses with a steady hand, then asked if they preferred still or sparkling. Her voice was soft but confident, the cadence of someone who had learned to speak gently in a world that didn't often return the favor. She didn't fawn or flatter, but offered her service with a sincerity that was increasingly rare. As the evening unfolded, Ryan found his eyes returning to the waitress between courses. Lila never lingered, never interrupted, and yet somehow always appeared when needed, as if attuned to the rhythm of their evening. He noticed how she spoke to Elena, not with hollow politeness, but with a quiet warmth that seemed to draw his wife out of her reserved shell. Elena, who had been more withdrawn lately, laughed softly at one of Lila's light-hearted comments about the menu's poetic descriptions. It wasn't just good service. It was something deeper, a kind of human kindness that no training could replicate. Ryan leaned back, watching the soft glow of candlelight dance on Elena's cheek as she chatted. Then his eyes flicked back to Lila as she served the couple at the next table. She moved efficiently, always with the same gentle tone, offering compliments, asking questions with genuine interest, and remembering small details about each guest. The kind of attention that made a person feel seen. For the first time in months, maybe even years, Ryan felt something stir beneath the weight of his routine life. A thought, a curiosity, that he couldn't shake. Who was this girl? Why was someone like her so graceful, so composed, working quietly in the background of someone else's world? He couldn't explain it yet, but he knew he was watching something rare unfold. And what he didn't know was that this one dinner, this one quiet act of kindness from a poor waitress with a kind smile, was about to alter the course of not just her life, but his as well. Ryan watched as Lila moved through the terrace like a breeze, quiet and unnoticed by most, but leaving a gentle presence in her wake. She greeted each guest not with robotic pleasantries, but with eye contact and subtle sincerity. She didn't speak too much, didn't try too hard, and never once glanced toward the bar or the kitchen with that weariness he often saw in overworked staff. Despite the frayed hem of her blouse and the worn soles of her shoes, she carried herself with the poise of someone born for a higher place than the one she occupied. "You've barely touched your wine," Elena said softly. Pulling Ryan's attention back to her, he offered her a faint smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" He glanced toward Lila, then back at his wife. "About people, and how often we miss them." Elena tilted her head, intrigued. "That's unusually reflective, for you." Ryan chuckled. "Maybe it's the age, or the night, or maybe I'm just starting to see things I used to overlook." Elena followed his gaze and saw Lila approach a table with a young couple nervously fumbling over the menu. She crouched slightly, spoke in a soft whisper, and pointed out a few items with kind encouragement. The couple visibly relaxed, grateful for the attention. Elena smiled. "She's good," Elena remarked. "Really good. You can tell she actually cares." Ryan nodded slowly. "She does." The main course arrived, a perfectly grilled salmon for Elena and a rare Wagyu steak for Ryan. Lila placed each plate down with gentle precision, explaining the sauces and garnishes, then asked if they needed anything else before stepping away. But as she turned, Elena reached out gently. "Lila," she said warmly, "I just want to thank you. You've made this evening special. I know it's your job, but you've done it with heart." Lila paused. For a second it seemed the words had caught her off guard. Her eyes flickered with something, gratitude perhaps, or maybe disbelief, and then she gave a deeper smile. "Thank you, ma'am," she said. "I always hope people leave feeling happier than when they came." Elena exchanged a glance with Ryan. "That's a beautiful goal." Lila gave a slight nod. "It's the least I can do, really." And with that, she slipped away again. The meal was delicious, as always, in a place like Aurora, but Ryan realized he was barely registering the flavors. His mind was elsewhere, retracing the moments of the evening, replaying Lila's mannerisms, her tone, her presence. He could tell she wasn't acting. She wasn't faking kindness for a tip or smiling through gritted teeth. There was something genuine about her spirit that felt rare. After dessert, Elena excused herself to the powder room and Ryan was left alone, swirling the last of his red wine and watching the skyline fade into darkness. He noticed Lila at the corner, jotting something down at a small server station. Her face was partially hidden by a curtain of hair that had slipped from her ponytail. She looked tired, but not weary in the soul-crushing way of someone drowning in misery. No. It was the tiredness of someone who was giving their all every day and hoping, praying that someday it would be worth it. On impulse, Ryan stood and walked over. "Lila." She looked up, startled, and immediately straightened. "Sir, is everything all right?" He held up a hand. "Everything was perfect. I just wanted to ask you something." She blinked. "Of course. Do you enjoy working here?" It was an odd question from a guest, especially a sharply dressed man who looked like he might own the building. But Lila answered without hesitation. I do. It's not always easy, but I get to meet good people, and I'm saving for something important. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Like what? She hesitated, then seemed to decide there was no harm in honesty. My little brother, he's smart, smarter than I ever was. I'm working so I can put him through college. My mom's sick and he's the only one who's going to have a real shot at something better. So I'm doing what I can. Her eyes didn't flinch. She didn't beg or plead or add a dramatic flair to her story. She simply said it quietly and honestly, like someone who had learned to live without expecting rescue. Ryan studied her for a long moment. What's his name? Ethan. How old is he? 16, top of his class. Ryan nodded, thinking. And what about you? No dreams of your own? She gave a small half-laugh. Maybe once. But when you love someone, you put their dreams first. Mine can wait. Ryan didn't respond right away. He looked out at the skyline, then back at her. That's noble. But dreams shouldn't always have to wait. Before she could answer, Elena returned. Ryan offered a polite smile to Lila and said, Thank you for everything tonight. Of course, sir. Ma'am, she said, nodding at Elena. As they prepared to leave, Ryan quietly slipped a folded card onto the table along with the bill. Lila, unaware, was already taking another order by the time she'd notice it. But the card bore a simple message in neat handwriting. If you ever need a real opportunity, contact me. As the Wallaces exited the restaurant, the doorman tipped his hat and Elena leaned into Ryan's arm, the city lights flickering behind them like a cascade of stars. Their car was already waiting, sleek, black, polished to a mirror shine. But Ryan paused before stepping in. He looked back at the building's towering glass windows. He couldn't see her from here, but he imagined Lila already clearing their table, collecting the empty glasses and tidying up what remained of their quiet celebration. She would see the envelope soon. He wondered what she'd think. Inside, Lila moved through the motions with practiced precision. The restaurant was winding down. The dinner rush had thinned to a quiet murmur. She returned to table 4, their table, to gather the last items. And that's when she saw it. A card, folded neatly, placed beside the tip tray. At first, she thought, it was a thank you note. It wouldn't be the first. Some wealthy guests left small tokens of appreciation. She opened it slowly, expecting polite praise. But when her eyes scanned the elegant handwriting, she froze. If you ever need a real opportunity, contact me. R.W. Her heart stuttered. R.W. Ryan Wallace? Her hand trembled slightly as she turned the card over. A phone number was written beneath. His name, direct, unfiltered, personal. The kind of thing no billionaire gave out lightly. She stood still for a moment, staring at it as the hum of the restaurant faded into the background. Could it be a mistake? A joke? No. His eyes hadn't been mocking. His questions, his attentiveness, the way he had watched her all evening. It had been thoughtful, not predatory. She replayed their brief conversation near the station. He had listened. Really listened. For a moment, Lila felt something strange stir inside her. Hope. Not the fragile kind she usually kept tucked away for Ethan's sake, but a deeper, more dangerous kind. The kind that whispered maybe. But life had taught her caution. She folded the card gently and slipped it into her pocket like it was made of glass. She didn't tell her manager. She didn't mention it to her fellow servers. This wasn't something to talk about until she knew what it really was. The shift ended past midnight. Lila changed into her worn jacket, slung her canvas bag over her shoulder, and stepped into the cold night air. She walked 3 blocks to the subway, past glittering department stores and shuttered boutiques, her thoughts spinning. She sat alone in the empty train car, the tracks rumbling beneath her. She took the card out again, reading it over and over. If you ever need a real opportunity, The words felt impossible. She had never been given a real opportunity. Not since she was 16 and had to drop out of her own college dreams to care for her mother and brother. Since then, it had been survival, day after day on her feet and in motion. And yet, something about Ryan Wallace had felt different. He hadn't pitied her. He hadn't tried to rescue her. He had offered something rare, a door. Now she had to decide whether she would walk through it. At home, Lila tiptoed through the small apartment she shared with her mother and Ethan. The lights were off. Her mother was asleep in the next room, an oxygen tank softly hissing with every breath. Ethan's textbooks were still open on the kitchen table, beside a half-empty cup of instant coffee. She smiled faintly and reached out to close the books, her fingers brushing over the worn covers. This was why she worked. Why she endured rude customers and long shifts and aching feet. Not for luxury, not for herself, for them. She sat at the table and took out the card one last time. And then, without letting herself overthink, she pulled out her phone and began to type the number. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment, and then she pressed it. The line rang twice, a click, and then a voice. Calm, precise, unmistakably him. Wallace. Lila's breath caught. She almost hung up, but then she forced herself to speak. Mr. Wallace. It's Lila, from the restaurant. She hesitated. I found your card. There was a pause on the other end, but when he replied, his voice was steady. I'm glad you called.